Hi everyone, welcome back. So, we're doing a purely question and answer session now. I hope you all can hear me and see me clearly. I changed my location so that you can, hoping that the audio is better over here. Just let me know if you can hear me and see me clearly. Rudransh, thank you. I saw your comment earlier. I couldn't thank you before. Thank you. You all can start putting down your questions in the comments, and then I'll try to ask Bharat all those questions. But I would advise, can we not ask specific laws, because Bharat is not an expert in every kind of law. He's an expert in white collar crime, in cyber law, and arbitration, and of course cracking the judiciary exam. 1 second, let me just add. Hello. I changed the location so that you can hear me better now. I can't hear you. There's some noise in the background.
I'm where I was. It should get
Okay.
better. Can you hear me now?
No, is it a fan or something in your background?
That sound is always been.
Okay, send me a request again. I'm, I'm adding him again. I'm adding him again. Thank you guys for all the kind messages. Really, it warms my heart. I'm waiting for Bharat to send me a request. Bharat, let me know in the comments when you send me a request again. Thank you, Kajal. Thank you for being such an active part in our live sessions. Thank you, Jyoti. Hi, Rushabh. How are you? Sent. Okay, Bharat, I can't see your request though. Oh, got it. Okay, wait, I'm adding you. Hi. Okay, now it's gone. Now you're clear.
Awesome. So let's
Han-
let's do the questions now.
Hanji.
You wanna go through them or should I?
I think people are still going to take time to write. The first question we have is, how do you deal when it comes to taking up negative cases that impact our personality?
That impact is personally. I'm not sure what's the import again of cases that impact us personally, but let me hazard a guess. Uh, Maybe you take up a case that moves you emotionally on a personal level. For example, you take up a case for somebody that you know to be guilty. For example, somebody who's been accused of a sexual assault against a minor, and that person has come to you for defense. And as per the bar council rules, you are mandated to take up that case, right? If you have the time and the person can afford you, then you are under a duty. So some of those cases, of course, would put you in a moral conundrum on whether you should take up this case, and if yes, how should you defend a person that you know to be guilty, and you know to be guilty of an offense that you think is outrageous morally. But I think my advice to you there would be to not think of yourself as an adjudicator. If you are taking that up as a lawyer, your job is not to decide. Your job, or our job, or dharma as a lawyer, is to take up a case and do our best by all legitimate means. Try to represent our client and put our best foot forward, and by our the strength of our argument, try to, convince the judge. And ultimately, it's for the judge to decide. Because when a lawyer starts deciding the guilt or no guilt,
Yeah.
that becomes a little problematic, because everyone has a right to counsel, has a right to legal representation, and your job is only to canvass his point. Ultimately, you're not deciding it, right? So yeah, that's how you can possibly deal with those moral conundrums.
Okay, Ritika has asked that is starting litigation at the age of 28 a good idea with no previous experience in it?
Well, starting litigation at any age is a great idea, because that's the nature of the profession. Don't look at it in terms of the age at all. You may be having a concern that there are people who've been practicing law from 20 to 21, and you've come to it a little too late in life. There is a lot of catching up to do. Whether at 28 you can take up a new thing from scratch. My answer to that is yes. 28 is nothing. Like 28 is a new 17, for example. You know, uh, do not think twice about that. Maybe you had to, and I'm not just saying this to make you feel better. Maybe you had to come to it at the right point where you are sufficiently mature and evolved. And a lawyer's journey as a litigator starts much later. I mean, you need to put in those 10, 15 years, and starting at 28, I don't see a problem at all, even if you have no previous experience. A lot of what we do as lawyers is common sense. A lot of what we do is analysis as logical human beings. So just because you haven't done it so far doesn't mean that you can't. So good luck and welcome.
Saloni is asking, sir, can you please discuss the pros and cons of working at a firm, and I'm guessing working as with an independent advocate or as an independent advocate?
That's a great question. Thank you very much. Working with a firm, I would start with the upsides. Working with a firm, the upside that you have is that you get to work on very complex and challenging cases. At firms, we get to work on some of the most complicated matters in the country. Why do firms get those matters? Because a firm usually has the bandwidth or the capacity to deal with a very big matter. For example, there is a matter that we are working on where the charge sheet runs into 65,000 pages. So you need a whole team to work on it. A team of 7, 8 lawyers who have divided their responsibilities on the whole thing. And so at a firm, you get to work on big ticket matters, brief the biggest senior counsels there, work on international matters a lot, work with law firms and lawyers in different countries. If you get to do an international arbitration, you get to learn so much about a different country, a different legal culture, a different legal system. Me and my team had the great fortune of doing an LCI arbitration last year in Paris, where it was such a great learning curve, because on the same table we had a law firm from London. One of the arbitrators was somebody from Paris. We had another arbitrator who was a barrister from London. Then we had a gentleman from Geneva. So there were 3 legal systems between the arbitral tribunal, and lawyers of 5 different jurisdictions, sitting on the same table. The sheer amount of learning that you get, on a matter like that is phenomenal. So that's certainly an upside. Um, Another upside is that, of course, there is financial security in that sense. Most law firms, they pay reasonably well. Now, coming to the downsides, I would not call them the downsides. What you would be missing out on, you would be missing out if you're starting off at a law firm. You would be missing out on very regular appearances in the court, because a law firm does not take up a lot of volume in terms of cases. The matters which come to a law firm are usually very big matters and very demanding. So you would not end up appearing in like 2 matters, 3 matters, 5 matters every day. No, you won't be able to do that. Maybe you'll get to go to the court 5 days a month or 6 days a month. If you want to be in courts every day, then a law firm may not be the right option, even on the litigation side. So yeah, that's broadly a structure of a law firm. If you really want to be in court, then joining a very busy chamber, which has a good diversity of work in terms of litigation of different kinds, civil, criminal, matrimonial, corporate, if your chamber has a good blend of all of that, as a young lawyer, joining a chamber is a good idea, because number one, you get to know what courtroom etiquette and craft is. You get to know what it means, what is this whole ecosystem of courts, how do you address the judge, how do you prepare a note, how do you talk to a client. You would be able to do a lot of that more with an individual practitioner or a smaller chamber, because you would be thrown in the deep end of the pool a lot of times,
Yes.
and you get
Yes.
to do a lot. Even the briefs that fall off your senior's table are enough for you to, sort of try and practice on your own. At a law firm, things are more structured in the sense that everyone has their own responsibilities. So one associate would be researching on one topic, somebody would be making cross-examination questions, and would be doing just that for 1 month. Many of these big arbitrations that we do go on for a year and a half. So
Yes.
that takes all of you. So there things are more structured, and there is a lot of help in terms of the court staff, the librarian, the access to resources in a law firm. But sometimes in a smaller chamber or an individual, you'll have to be drafting, filing, arguing, talking to the client, going, buying court ticket and stamp all yourself on a single day. So it depends on what you really want to do. That's the broad framework.
There is one question by SD Agarwal, that's his handle name. He's saying, how do you balance professional life and personal life? I also want to know this. What is a day in the life of Bharat Chugh?
Oh, that's well, I'm terrible at balance actually. As my mom keeps reminding me, I've been very bad at balancing things. I've always let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We've always tried doing too much and go too deep into things that we do, go down every rabbit hole, and that has really you know ensured that I'm not able to strike a great balance, so to speak. We ended up, for example, in the last 1.5 years, as my colleagues would testify, we ended up spending 16, 17, 15 hours a day, every day in office, you know. But for the past few months, and even before COVID, I've sort of tried doing this, because I realized someplace that if you are just working, then at some point your body, your mind is going to give up.
Yes.
If it has to be a more sustainable model, you need to work out, you need to take care of yourself, you need to read things other than law, you need to engage socially, you need to give your family time. My mom, loves to call me a part-time family member, but for the past couple of months, I'm trying to change that. And
Mine tells me that I think it's a PG, the house that we live in. She's like, you come only to sleep. Where are you the whole day?
Yeah, our moms would totally connect. Yeah, I think that's the common complaint. But I realize that balance is important, because the time that you take off from work, for example, reading fiction, is going to add so much to your practice of law also. So do it for your own good. Do it because the lawyer has to be a more well-rounded personality. He's not a bookworm. He's a guy or a girl who understands politics, who understands sociology, philosophy, economics, international affairs. Because you, as a lawyer, are supposed to be convincing a judge, convincing a client,
Yes.
negotiating with the opposite party. You need to have a more well-rounded personality. You need to have a sense of humor. You need to have the ability to diffuse a situation. So all of that happens only if you are balancing it. Uh, a day in my life, uh, how it used to be 2 years back and how it has been now for the past few months is different. Now I really make it a point to work out, at least 45 minutes, half an hour a day, uh, and also make it a point to read, at least an hour a day. Audiobooks help a lot. You can do it while you're walking, or you're working out, running on the treadmill, or you're on your way to work. Podcasts, they keep me busy. So between reading, listening, and working out and work, that sort of sums up my day.
Wow, that's a day in his life, guys. If you have any comments, please put them in the comment section. Okay, Bharat, you want to take up some questions now? They're very technical, so you will have to answer them yourself. There is one about capital punishment that I see. Your views on capital punishment.
Are we starting? Oh, damn, there's a lot. Okay. Are we starting in a reverse chronology?
Yes, I think reverse is better.
Okay, I'll start with the Kajal's question. In your busy schedule, generally, in how much time do you finish a novel? Depending on what book and by whom, some books are very, very easy reads. I mean, you can sort of just go through them, in one sitting. There are some which are not as easy. Salman Rushdie, for example, is going to take the best of you mentally, and you'll take longer to finish. I like to finish them as soon as I can because then things are still fresh in your mind. And I read multiple books at the same time. That's the only infidelity I accept because it keeps it interesting. You read fiction, you read non-fiction, you also take up a
Yeah.
history book, you take up a law
Yeah.
book. It keeps it interesting for you. So I read multiple books at the same time, and that sometimes means that I take longer to finish. Abhishek says, how can you work with good lawyer like yourself even in first year of law school? Because people don't give that opportunity. Abhishek, that's not an unfounded concern.
Send him your CV.
I can see where you're coming from. Uh, Opportunity, is something that we have. The number of people applying is always more than the opportunities. Let's be, very, very honest about it. That's the nature of the profession. So what you really need to do is to stand out in your resume, in your cover letter. You really need to, study the people you are applying to very, very carefully. For example, you are applying to a lawyer who's very passionate about white collar crime law. Try to identify an issue in that area of law and write to him that this is what I think. What do you think? Try to get into that conversation. It has been, so many times that some very bright young lawyer or law student writes to me saying that, Bharat, you wrote this in your article, but I respectfully disagree with what you are saying. This is another way of looking at it. And I've been corrected. And that is something that catches the recruiter's attention, that catches the person attention. And there is no way that you would not get that opportunity. You just have to be a little creative about it. Make a good cover letter which is customized. Don't send the same thing, to a huge bunch of respondents. Try to customize it. And, of course, having a good resume is important. I am personally biased towards people who write a lot and who can write very, very effectively. So if you're, sending it to me, please attach a writing sample, for example. And if you've written a blog, give me a copy of that. Happy to give you an opportunity if, our interests or experiences align somewhere. Now, Vikalp, I have keen interest in criminal litigation. What do I do? First generation lawyer, recent graduate. Vikalp, if you're keen in criminal law, you pursue that. Try to ensure your writings are focused on that. You've already made a call that you want to be a criminal lawyer. In criminal law, also you have to identify where the vacuum is, because right now I see uh, criminal law and cyber crime as a very interesting area that's going to open up a lot of opportunities. So focus on that. Marry your interest in criminal law with cyber crime or IT and AI, and I'm sure you'll get a good opportunity. Try to marry your interest in criminal law with IBC, for example. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code has many provisions which talk about criminal liability. Try to put them together. Try to combine your criminal law interest with PMLA. That's a very important area of criminal defense where a lot of opportunities would come up. Try to look at extradition. Not many people have done a lot of work on extradition. So try to identify a vacuum on criminal law and try to work on that, and you'll be able to carve out a space for yourself. Soumya has a question on capital punishments.
Soumya also wants to send you poetries.
Oh, wow. Feel free to, Soumya. Happy to sort of read them. But Soumya's question is, capital punishments were abolished by 97. Should it be done or not? What do you think? Okay, so this is slightly outside the brief, but I'll still answer it since you've asked it. Capital punishment, my view personally is that, and I would agree with what the view of the Supreme Court is, that it should be confined to the most rarest of rare cases. And only once every other option is unquestionably foreclosed that you go in for capital punishment, because it is irreversible. It is a very, it is, you cannot undo it if you've convicted an innocent. I agree with that. I also see a concern, and somebody may ask me that rarest of rare by itself is so subjective. So whether you get death penalty or not depends on which judge do you land before. Some judges are pro capital punishment, some are anti capital punishment. So all of this does make it very, very subjective. For some judges, it may be the rarest of rare case. For some judges, it may not be. And the fact that somebody's life and death depends on a judge's personal opinion and not legal principle is a cause for concern. I agree
Yes.
with you. So
I
what
would
I
say
would really see is there should be some capital punishment, but we need to have stricter judicial discipline on how it is administered.
yes.
Gagneet. Why do some of the candidates, after serving as a junior civil judge, resign and get into litigation? Is it due to infrastructural reforms or reasons, or because of any other reasons? A great question. I'm not sure that a lot of people have left judicial services in order to come back to litigation. I think the number still is a very, very small number, because I remember when I resigned in December 2016, I was one of the very, very few people who sort of put in their papers. So I don't think it is a very major phenomena. I've already explained what my reasons were and how passionate I am about advocacy, so I would not want to get into it. My reason certainly was not lack of infrastructural support. In Delhi, fortunately, we have good infrastructural support compared to the other states. Other states are also catching up, but I don't think people sort of leave for infrastructural reasons. Whenever they leave, maybe they want to explore other things in life, and they see lawyering is something that possibly aligns to their personality more, or for whatever reason. So different people, different reasons. I don't think infrastructural support is one. Some people also, let me extend your question a bit. Some people also think that is it because the judges are not paid as well as somebody gets paid in the private sector? Is that a reason? A lot of people have that question. After the recent few pay commissions, the judges are paid, quite well. They are paid at par with IPS and IAS officers, and the state does take care of you in a lot of ways. The way we pay our judges, it's still not comparable with international benchmarks. Indian judges, as I keep saying, are one of the lowest paid in the world, which is unfortunate and sad, because the sheer number of cases that they do, they possibly work harder than the judges in the other jurisdiction.
Definitely.
So much needs to be done. But right now, the compensation and remuneration is not that bad, and I don't think that's ever a reason for somebody to leave. At least it was not a reason for me to leave. Neha says, "How can I join your team being a lawyer?" Please write, Neha, with your CV and your cover letter and your previous experiences. Let's see what we can do with it. Shubha has a question. We have 4 optionals in our 3rd semester: media law, censorship, private international law, legal philosophy, and WCC. Could you suggest me the subjects which have better scopes in future? Okay, good question. I'm not sure what WCC is. Janvi, do you know what WCC is? Okay. So,
We are no longer the young population. We don't know the lingo anymore.
talk about yourself, Janvi. I'm young.
Hello, I'm younger than you.
Okay. Yeah, you've been 18 for 12 years now.
16.
Okay, sure. Stand corrected. So just to answer your question, Shubha, coming back, media law is definitely very relevant.
Oh, she meant white collar crimes.
Oh, okay. Media law and censorship is very important. With social media becoming more and more relevant, how do you regulate it? How do you defend those cases? How do you defend social media intermediaries? What is the liability for online defamation? All of these questions are going to be very, very important. So it's definitely a great area. White collar crime also is a great area. Private international law again is a good area, because in an increasingly globalized world where a lot of trade and business is happening between countries, a lot of disputes have a private international law, conflict of laws angle to it. That's also good. And legal philosophy again is something that never goes out of fashion. So these are your fundamentals, your basic principles. So I think we ended up recommending all of them. So you take the call. From the perspective of being future proof, I think media law and white collar crime are very important areas.
Yes. I think Govind had asked this question. What do you think of social media laws? He'd asked it in the previous session. I don't know if he's still here with us.
What's the question again?
What do you think about social media laws?
Okay. So this is again in the nature of an opinion. I think a lot needs to be done on how we regulate social media. Uh, the old laws of defamation, are not really equipped to deal with an online social media situation where information, communication have become, it's a completely different ballgame. IT Act has certain provisions which talk about the liability of an intermediary. Now I
Yeah.
think the new guidelines on intermediary liability are being discussed, where social media companies would have to regulate themselves to a great extent and have in-house committees. Now that is being debated. There are challenges to that as well, whether a private platform can decide and censor itself, or is it the courts or the government who should do that job of censoring? Can a company decide what I can or cannot say? It's a question of my freedom of speech and expression. So yeah, it's a great area of practice and discussion. I think we'll be needing a separate session altogether to even touch the tip of the
Yes.
iceberg on those
Yes.
areas.
Yes.
Because your question is, what are the areas of practice as an advocate that are going to be promising? Good question. I've been thinking about that a lot for a lecture I did. IBC certainly is a great area. Uh, with huge NPAs with the banks and businesses failing, and the financial industry has seen a downturn even because of COVID. In the next few years and months, IBC would become very, very relevant because many people have been pushed to the brink of insolvency because of this. There's a huge crisis. Social media laws, IT law, regulation concerning AI, electronic contracts, uh, big data, white collar crime, internal investigations. Uh, these are important areas. Restructuring. A lot of people would have to restructure their loans and their financial liabilities. So these would be good, interesting areas to work at. International taxation in the case of data companies or these big social media companies. How do you tax them if the company has an office in a tax haven somewhere and does not have physical presence in the country but is doing business in the country? How do you tax that situation? So international tax, transfer pricing, all of this would become sort of important.
So we'll take questions for 5-6 minutes more, then we'll end this session. Okay, it's been half an hour. We've exceeded our time by half an hour today.
Sure. Uh, the book Courtroom Genius on Nani Palkhiwala is an interesting book. Please do take it up. Very interesting trials in which Mr. Palkhiwala appeared for and against. I'm not going to get into the critical analysis.
Bharat, Dr. Pankhudi has asked, sir, please tell me cybercrime number. There is no available number on Google. Just,
Okay.
yeah, she wants to know how to contact someone in case of a cybercrime.
So you will have to. So there is I think, a central helpline of sorts. There is also cyber crime police stations and concerned officers in your jurisdiction. I'm not sure which jurisdiction you're speaking from, but I'm sure if you dial your local police station, they'll be able to lead you to the cyber crime police station, which has jurisdiction over your area. I think Vikalp, we've already talked about how to explore a career in criminal law. RIF, okay. How to prepare for Delhi judiciary in your fifth year. Uh, all of what I said, applies. Fifth year is a good time to start actually. I started in the fifth year of law school myself after I had experienced different things and after I had decided that I want to be a judge. So good time to start. How do you start? You read your fundamental Bare Acts really, really well. You look at the past year question papers and see what is the trend like, what are they asking usually, and then sort of structure your preparation accordingly for areas which are coming up again and again in the exam. Try and focus more on those areas. If you're focusing on DJS, then do develop a flair of writing. There's a huge emphasis on your ability to communicate well if you are taking Delhi as the exam, because Delhi exam really is one of the most practical exams in anywhere in India, where it actually puts you in the driving seat, where it expects you to write judgments and orders during the exam, frame charges. It's a very practical sort of an exam. So when you have to write judgments and orders, you really need to think like a judge and write like a judge. And so work a lot on your answer writing. If you write some answers, I'm happy to have a look at them and sort of weigh in on the things that you can do to improve your answer writing. But a lot of emphasis on reasoning abilities in Delhi more than rote learning. So focus on those areas and look at the past year papers. Vikrant has asked me the question: what is the preference, ascending order, according to you in relation to morals, ethics, and humanities? So that's intense, Vikrant. Uh, Interesting question. Uh, what is according to you in relation to morals,
Sorry.
ethics, and humanity? So I don't know if it's in general sense of philosophy, or how does this tie into law? If you are trying to talk about morality, ethics, and humanity in the context of law, the only thing that I can say here is that morality is something that forms the basis of a law, but it is not always law. For example, something that may be very very immoral may still be lawful, right? For example, I had the opportunity of deciding a case, which is the tea sellers case, where I found that there was a draconian law which punished people who sell tea in a train, okay, or beg in a train. I found that to be extremely immoral and unconscionable. I could not really punish people for selling tea in a train. I mean, when the state cannot give them jobs, it hardly lies in the mouth of the state to actually punish young people for selling tea in a train, right? So I was in a dilemma where a law asked me to punish somebody, and there were no exceptions. It was an offense selling tea in a train, but I found that thing to be immoral. The act of me punishing him is immoral, right? There you will have to work out ways and means in order to ensure that law and morality sort of, meet each other. Because I, as a judge, cannot sleep with a good conscience if what I do is immoral or my decision sort of does injustice, even if it
Yeah.
is lawful. Law and justice, according to me, should dwell together, and you'll be able to strike that balance uh, yourself when you're there. Vansh has
Bharat,
asked me about.
there are people asking your age and whether you're single or in a relationship. Do you feel like answering those questions?
Uh, I I would say Article 20. My I exercise my right to silence the
Okay,
Vansh.
just two more questions, then we have to end this session.
Sure. And my age is I'm turning 31 this month. So
I
yeah.
thought you were going to say 18.
But you can't be 18 forever.
Of course you can.
I know you've been 18 for 12 years, but
16.
16, I stand corrected. Bunch. If you're aiming for a job in corporate law firms, what specialization should one opt for in LLM? Contract law or something else? Uh, Bunch, when you say corporate law firm, do you mean a dispute resolution practice within a law firm as in a transactional
Oh.
lawyer? For example, if you want to do mergers and acquisitions or capital markets or project finance or pure corporate advisory work, then you should do an LLM in corporate law or securities law. However, if you want to join a law firm and be on the litigation side as I am, then you can do your LLM in contract law if you want to go the arbitration way, or in arbitration law, or in criminal law if you are interested in that, or banking if you're interested in IBC practice. So it depends on what you really want to do. And now, Janvi, I'll throw it to you for you to read the last question or questions.
Okay, people are asking if it's beneficial for them to do masters after graduation in law.
I personally feel that you should do masters after a few years if you really want to. After
Yeah.
graduation, do come into the practice of law or be a judge, whatever that you want to do. Get a taste of what life actually is, in courtrooms, and that would ensure that you are not just, living in a, ivory tower of sorts. I mean, if you want to go into academia, of course, by all means, graduate, do your masters, and go into academia. But if the idea is to come to practice, active legal practice, or be a judge, then it's important for you to gather experience, because that ensures that you are able to effectively use your LLM also well. You do your graduation, you look at what the lay of the land is, then you do your LLM, you are going to get more out of your LLM also. It would be a better investment that way. So that's it. That's my advice.
Okay. With that, I think we wrap up today's session. I know you guys have plenty of questions. You can DM me, you can DM him. We'll be happy to answer your questions at a later time. But today, we really need to end this session. Thank you so much, Bharat. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing so much knowledge with everyone. And yes, I know you're a busy man. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.